So I do not mean to jump around here, but I'm going to report to you what has happened to me, and you can learn from that. So a big part of their game is to bankrupt people. And they find that they can bankrupt people either by setting them up in business, and they'll do the same thing with houses. So they invest a lot of money, either their savings or they take out loans, and they put together a great business that is set up to fail. And then they have to turn over the business to these military people that are together with the banks. So you build it, and then when you don't have any income to pay off your bills, they'll take it all over. They'll sell somebody a house, they'll invest a lot of time and money into the house, then for one reason or another, they will lose the house. The military will cause them to lose the house. They can't keep up with their bills, so you just renovated a house, you put all your money, all your heart and soul into a house, and then they take it over. And they're doing this all across America to millions of families. And this is the silent invasion of America. This is economic war on the American people. So lots of their games will be through house sales. So I want to tell you right now, a house inspector is a joke. In Connecticut, I don't think they need any sort of background to be a house inspector. I think you just go apply for an application, and they could have a guy who's been collecting garbage his whole life be approved to be a house inspector. It's not required that they have any construction experience or any idea about codes or the building of houses. Then I had a house inspector for this house in New Hampshire, and he looked old and senile. And to give you an example, he was mentioning that the roof was installed incorrectly on the shed back here. You see how these sections of roof are put on top of each other? They're backwards, he's saying. And he said this all has to be taken apart and put on the right way. Now, I had 101 things go wrong with the shed, and the roof was not one of them. The roof was the only thing that held together. The roof was the only good thing about this shed. Now up here at the roof, where the wall meets the roof, they left these huge spaces, and that allowed all types of mice and birds and squirrels and everything to get in there. What they also did was install insulation into this shed, and then they did not put walls over it, so all the insulation was exposed. And all the mice and the critters that got into the shed, they loved using the insulation to keep warm in. So it was like a rat and mouse magnet in here. They were all behind the insulation. So of course, the house inspector did not bring any of that up, and instead was fixated on the roof and wanted me to remove a perfectly good roof. So I went in there with plastic garbage bags, and I pulled out all the insulation, and all the rats would fall down. I bagged that up, put it at the curb for the next time I went to the dump, and then I had to take 2x4s and hammer them all across the top of the wall where the wall meets the roof here. And that cut off all the openings all around the top of the shed there, because all the animals were getting in through there. So the first thing is that when you have an outdoor structure, like a shed, you need to treat it like any building, which is that you need to have proper siding on it. When I moved in here, this shed wasn't even painted. So after a year or two, the wood would start rotting. 2, there was a huge drainage problem. Whenever you have a structure, the ground has to go down away from the building. So around the building, it should be high, and it should gradually slope down away from the structure. And that will cause any rain that comes off the roof or falls around the perimeter of your house or building to flow away from the structure and not get underneath it. Water is the enemy of any building. So this person had set up a garden that was the high point that directed all the water toward the base of the shed. So all the water was pooling underneath the shed. And what I also noticed is that somebody appears to have removed the whole foundation to the shed. They left one retaining wall block on every corner of the shed and removed all the other blocks, is what it appears like to me. So you had this very well-built structure with all these retaining wall blocks missing. So over time it began to sink into the mud. So a big problem will be flooding. And you can always fix the flooding by making sure that the water slopes away from your house or your building. It should be at the highest point around your house and then should gradually drain away. It should gradually slope down away from the house. You got to be conscious of where the water is being directed. If you dig a trench around the perimeter of your house, you're going to have a moat around your house. And that water is eventually going to build up and get into your basement. And it will ruin everything. When I was house shopping, I looked at a house and the basement was filled with water. There was a back door leading into a basement area and the whole thing was flooded. I think the house was up on foreclosure. So my guess is that there was 101 problems with that house too. And the thing is that people that move in, they pay to have a house inspector check it out. The house inspector won't say anything to them. They pay for construction people to come in and fix the problem. And the construction people overcharge them and will not solve the problem. They'll scratch their head, they'll do little things, but it will go on and on and on because their goal is to bankrupt you, not do a good job to fix the problem. What appears to have happened here is that somebody purposely put in a bunch of gardens around the house that basically kept all the water from draining properly away from the house. So they put gardens on every side of the house. They raised up the land on every side of the house to make sure all the water stayed around the base of the house and want to drain properly. So next time it rains, go outside and see if you have any problems with the water pooling around your house. See how it's draining. Make sure the gutters and the roof are operating properly. Another big problem with drainage is that the gutter system on your roof is not working properly. So you need to go up and make sure that the gutters are cleaned. And then make sure the water drains correctly down the vertical pipe. It can't be clogged anywhere through there. If you look at the house, you look at houses, oftentimes there's a foundation to the house. There's concrete wall block here. If you buy a shed from Home Depot, it's all wooden. So if you live in an area where there's a lot of snow, the snow will build up around the shed and that moisture will end up getting in the wood and rotting the wood. And so in New Hampshire, you could drive down the street and see any number of sheds that are falling over. So the best thing to do is to shovel the snow away from the shed. That will make the shed last 100 times longer. I know it's easier said than done, but that's also true about your house. If you have the time, go around with the shovel and clear the snow around the perimeter of your house as well. It's an easy way to get some exercise after work, and it's very good for your house to clear the snow away from the foundation of your house. So when I moved into this house, none of the porches were painted. And what happens is that mold will build up and it becomes very slippery. So if you ever go onto a porch or a deck and it's very slippery, it's due to you having mold build up all over the porch and it becomes slimy. And it'll be dangerous in the winter. People could fall down it very easily. And the U.S. military is very fond of using mold on people's houses. It makes them sick, it eventually kills them, and it does things like make the steps unsafe so that you and your family could go out one morning and fall down the steps. And if you try to paint it or stain the wood, it won't adhere to it, and it'll end up just flaking off. It'll end up peeling off after a season or two. So if that happens to any of you, what you want to use is ammonia mixed with water. You just mix 1 gallon of water with 1 cup of ammonia in a pitcher, and you pour that into spray bottles, and you spray it all over your porch or your deck, and that will kill all the mold, and it'll dry up the wood very nice. The next day, if you look at the wood will look 10 years newer. And it dries the wood and it makes it so the stain or paint will absorb and adhere to that wood. So if you ever walk across a surface like a porch, a deck, some stairs, and they're very slippery, it's due to mold buildup. And the only way to kill that mold is by using ammonia and water. And then you could paint or stain that wood and it will have no problem adhering to that wood. So ammonia and water is the best thing to use to clean any part of your house. I want to refer you to 2 videos, important documentaries that I have on this channel. And one is mold utilized as a bioweapon. You must see mold utilized as a bioweapon. When you move into a new house, the military often has mold in the house. And it grows, usually on windows, and eventually weakens and kills your family. That is part of their soft kill program. So I explain how you use water and ammonia, and you spray it all over your house, and you wipe your whole house down. And you soak everything in your house in either bleach and water or ammonia and water to get rid of the mold. And also I have a documentary entitled Poisonous Chemicals in Home Heating Oil. And that is of great importance to people that have large oil tanks in their basement. The oil companies will come and fill up that tank with oil that contains an additive. That additive will release a vapor into your living space that will eventually shut down your respiratory system. Your lungs start to fail and you get very weak. And the last thing I want to say about houses and construction is that if anything looks funny, have it removed or taken out. They had the weirdest thing in this house, which is that they had my furnace. They had all the water pipes that heat the house could be circulated through this giant wood-burning stove. Now the inspector told me that I could either use the wood-burning stove with the furnace or I could use them separately. And that was a very sneaky way of explaining that. What he should have said is that you cannot use this wood-burning stove at all unless you have a generator on that is pumping water through the wood-burning stove and all throughout your house. If you wanted to go down and just light a fire in the wood-burning stove, you would end up melting all these pipes. That was never explained to me. They said you could either use the wood-burning stove with the furnace or you could use them separately. So one day, when I decided to use the wood-burning stove, I put some wood in there, I started a fire, and the pipes behind the wood-burning stove blew up and released a huge cloud of smoke and water vapor that filled up the entire house. So the whole thing was rigged to explode. So I don't want to go into too much detail about that now because I have about an hour documentary devoted to that subject. But the bottom line is this: if you ever see something weird like this, a wood-burning stove with copper pipes hooked to it, have them remove it. So when you hear on the news that people's houses go up in flames and you think, what did that idiot do to cause that big problem? Well, that could easily be any of us who were unlucky enough to buy a house that was owned by these scumbags in the U.S. military. That will set the whole place up to cause problems like that. Another thing is that don't expect to find any good videos on YouTube as far as construction. I don't want to be paranoid, but I found several videos that seemed to go out of their way to give you the wrong advice. So everybody says if you want to know how to do something, just go on YouTube and do a search for it. But YouTube is filled with videos with bad advice. So at the very least, watch 50 or 100 videos on the subject and maybe you'll get a good tip here and there. But what I do is I try to find old books that people sell at flea markets. Time Life Books used to have construction books. Will give you a page or two how to do repairs with all sorts of things. But if you're watching YouTube, don't watch 1 or 2 videos and just do what they do and expect everything to turn out okay. You're going to need to do a lot of research and thinking and planning if you're doing anything like building on your property. So a lot of YouTube videos are a joke.